If you would please take your Bibles and go to Zechariah 3. I'm going to be teaching a topic on the branch.
Yes.
And thank you, Dan and Cher, for the opportunity to teach tonight. So the branch. We're going to look at how Jesus Christ has become the branch and what it means for us. And here in Central Florida, we're seeing signs of spring here. We're full spring ahead. We see a lot of new leaves starting. New leaves on the, the ends of the twigs. We had a frost and a lot of things had died off here, and you were wondering if it was ever going to turn green again because it was brown everywhere. Everything is copper and brown, but things are turning green here. And if someone were going to be growing fruit trees in this area, this would be the month where they would need to cut them back. Well, it was probably like a month ago would be the best time before the new leaves spring out. And take a small twig or branch off of a known good fruit tree, and they could graft it onto a rootstock. And we're going to look at that and how that means biblically and spiritually. But that's how a lot of times they reproduce fruit trees, is they take grafts from existing trees. So let's read Zechariah 3, starting in verse 1. And he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing in his right hand to resist him. And the Lord said unto Satan, The Lord rebuke thee, O Satan, even the Lord that hath chosen Jerusalem rebuke thee. Is not this a brand plucked out of the fire? Now Joshua was clothed with filthy garments, and that's indicative of an old man nature, and stood before the angel. And he answered and spake unto those that stood before him, saying, Take away the filthy garments from him. And unto him he said, Behold, I have caused thine iniquity to pass from thee, and I will clothe thee with a change of raiment. Then I said, Let them set a fair mitre upon his head. A mitre was the headpiece worn by the priest, and that had become dirty from their iniquities. So they set a fair mitre upon his head and clothed him with garments. And the angel of the Lord stood by. And the angel of the Lord protested unto Joshua, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, If thou wilt walk in my ways, and if thou wilt keep my charge, then thou shalt also judge my house, and shalt also keep my courts, and I will give thee places to walk among these that stand by. Hear now, O Joshua the high priest, thou and thy fellows that sit before thee, for they are men wondered at. For behold, I will bring forth my servant the branch. For behold, the stone that I have laid before Joshua, think chief cornerstone, upon this stone shall be 7 eyes. I'm not going to go into the 7 eyes teaching, but this is only used 3 times in the Bible, and it's always attributed to the Messiah. Behold, I will engrave the graving thereof, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will remove the iniquity of that land in 1 day. In that day, saith the Lord of hosts, ye shall call every man his neighbor under the vine and under the fig tree. Now, I didn't really know what verse 10 meant, but in the Amplified Version, I think it clears it up a little bit better. Verse 10 reads, In that day, declares the Lord of hosts, every one of you will invite his neighbor to sit under his vine and under his fig tree, enjoying peace and prosperity in the kingdom. And that's something that we can do right now. We can invite our neighbors to sit under the branch, as we know is Jesus Christ, and enjoy peace and prosperity, because that is something that God guarantees us now. In the Old Testament, there were 2 different Joshuas. One was the successor to Moses, who brought the Israelites into the Promised Land, and the other is this high priest that was a priest during the Babylonian captivity. The name Joshua, or Yehoshua, means Yahweh is salvation, God is deliverance, or the Lord is salvation. So it's not hard to see that Jesus, which is the Greek word for Joshua, is both our deliverer who brings us into the promised land and the children of Israel, and high priest, as we know, high priest like Methuselah in the New Testament, or it says that in Hebrews. He is also the chief cornerstone and has made our filthy garments clean on the day that we believed. There are two Hebrew words for branch. Both are masculine nouns. But one of them is semach. It's Tsemach, and it means sprout, growth, branch, shoot, or bud. And the other one is netzer, Netzer. Semach, by the way, is used 12 times, and netzer is used 4 times. And netzer is sprout, shoot, branch, so similar words, but it's also figuratively a descendant or a scion, Scion. And what is a scion? Well, I'm glad you asked. A scion, the definition of scion is a descendant, a child, especially a descendant of a wealthy, aristocratic, or influential family, an heir, like the scion of a railroad empire. But it could also mean a living portion of a plant, such as a bud or a shoot, joined to a stalk, like a rootstock, in grafting, a twig or shoot, especially one cut for grafting or planting, like a cutting. So let's look at this Hebrew word semach. Hold your place in Zechariah. We're going to be back here, but please go to Jeremiah. We're going to go to Jeremiah 23. Jeremiah 23 in verse 5. Jeremiah 23:5. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will raise unto David a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and prosper, and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. So he's going to raise unto David a righteous branch. And go to Jeremiah 33:15. Jeremiah 33:15. In those days and at that time, I will cause the branch of righteousness to grow up unto David, and he shall execute judgment and righteousness in the land. And now we're going to go back to Zechariah 6 in verse 12. Zechariah 6, verse 12. And speak unto him, saying, Hi, Vanessa.
Hello. Sorry for my lateness.
Zechariah said that?
Zechariah said, yeah, he said, Hi, Ebenezer. Zechariah 6:12 is where we're at, Ebenezer. And speak unto him, saying, Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, Behold, the man whose name is the branch, and he shall grow up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. Remember, the temple is figurative, because we are now the temple of the Lord. So he shall build the temple of the Lord. That we are now the temple of the Lord, according to 1 Corinthians 3:16. So that is a couple of words of semach. Remember, it was used 12 times. We just looked at 3. Now, netzer, Netzer, is also another word used for branch. And let's go to Isaiah in verse 11. And remember, this was only used 4 times. We're going to look at 2 occurrences of netzer out of Isaiah. Isaiah 11:1. Isaiah 11:1. And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse. Think about a stick, like again, it's a branch, a stick, a shoot, out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. And then go to Isaiah 60, verse 21. Isaiah 60, 60, verse 21. Thy people also shall be all righteous. They shall inherit the land forever. The branch of my planting, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified. So I think it's pretty easy to see here that the branch they're talking about is Jesus Christ, and that God set him up, and he's out of David. But we're going to look at some more interesting things. This word Netzer is the root word used for the town of Nazareth. Netzer, Netzer, is the root word for Nazareth. Nazareth, as you may remember, you don't have to turn there, but you can if you want. Matthew 2:23. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, he should be called a Nazarene. And in Luke 2:4, and Joseph also went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth unto Judea, into the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was the house and lineage of David. So remember, Jesus' parents lived in Nazareth, then they went to Bethlehem, she had the baby, and then they went to Egypt, and then they eventually went back to Nazareth. The name Nazareth, again, derived from the root word netzer for branch in Isaiah 11:1, from Jesse's roots a branch, netzer, will bear fruit. Well, Bethlehem was Jesse's hometown. David is from Bethlehem because his father Jesse was from Bethlehem. So it's not hard to see there where it says that in Isaiah 11:1, a root out of the stem of Jesse, right? So Jesus Christ came from Jesse because he came from David. Bethlehem is also, well, yeah, I read that. But they could also be referring to both Bethlehem and Nazareth there, because root out of the stem of Jesse. Bethlehem was from where Jesse was, not Nazareth, sorry. So little bit about Nazareth. It's a town in Lower Galilee, which is the northern part of Israel. Although not mentioned by name in the Old Testament, it was built on a hill, and it was about 3 days walking journey from Jerusalem. It has a neighboring town, which is about 4 miles away, called Cana. The population of Nazareth at the time of Jesus Christ was estimated to be approximately 480 people, so pretty small. The present name is Nazarah, Nazirah. So they don't call it Nazareth anymore. The town has about 6,000 inhabitants today. But the literal translation of this town's name could be called Branchtown, or Shootsville, or Scion City, because it comes from the root word Netzer, which has those names in it. A Nazarene is what they call people from Nazareth. There's no Old Testament references to Nazareth, and a Nazarite is not related to Nazareth. So a Nazarite, or the Nazarite vow, is a completely different word than the word Nazareth. It has been theorized in the Old Testament prophets, because remember it said, he shall be called a Nazarene from the Old Testament prophets. Well, there's no reference of Nazareth in the Old Testament. So what are they talking about? Well, there's a similar word to branch in the Old Testament, which means despised and rejected. Remember in Isaiah 53, it says he was despised and rejected of men. So there's multiple verses in the Old Testament that talk about the Messiah being despised and rejected. So because this related word, that's why I think they said that he would be called a Nazarene. And remember, Nathaniel in John said, can anything good come out of Nazareth? I mean, it was kind of a backward town, and people were, they didn't think people there were educated. It was kind of like people we think of from West Virginia in our culture. They're kind of backwoods, hillbilly folk. And in Zechariah 6:12, when we read, and I'll just read it, and speak unto them, saying, thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, behold, the man whose name is the branch, and he shall grow up out of his place, and shall build the temple of the Lord. Well, this was spoken by Zechariah while he was still in captivity in Babylon. What they found was that a large number of people who were captive in Babylon settled in the northern part of Israel after their captivity was over. They came back into Israel, and they stayed around the Nazareth area. There are two of the 12 sons of Judah, or not Judah, Abraham, that, oh, maybe it is 12 sons of Judah. Yeah, Israel. So there are two of the sons that really kept very detailed records of their family history. One was the Levites, because they were the priests, and the other was the king line out of Judah. So that's how both Jesus's mother and father, or stepfather in this case, could trace their line all the way back to David, because they were of the king line. Because they kept such incredible records even during the captivity. So when they went to captivity to Babylon, a lot of the Davidians, the David line, came back into northern Israel, especially around the Nazareth area, the branch. So Nazareth is literally the settlement of the branch Davidians. Now, let's take a little look about grafted and how we're grafted in. And go to Romans 11:16. So we've established that Jesus was the branch. He was of the lineage of David and Jesse. He's going to set up the, build the temple. He's the chief cornerstone. He's our priest, our high priest and deliverer. And now we've been grafted in through our believing. Romans 11:16. For if the first fruits be holy, the lump is also holy. Remember Jesus Christ, the first fruits from the dead. And if the roots be holy, so are the branches. And if some of the branches be broken off, and thou being a wild olive, wert grafted in among them, and with them partakest of the root and fatness of the olive tree, boast not against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. So we've been grafted in, but we're not the ones to boast. We're boasting of Christ, who we're grafted in with. Now, Romans 11, verse 26. And so all Israel shall be saved, as it is written, there shall come out of Sion, that's can be spelled Zion with a Z-I-O-N. In the King James, it's with an S. Or Sion, S-C-I-O-N, which is that branch or shoot, out of Sion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob, which obviously is what Jesus Christ did. Now we'll go to John 15, where Jesus talks about this branch and the fruit. John 15:1. John 15:1, Jesus says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away. And every branch that beareth fruit, he purges or prunes it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now, this is especially true of figs. You have to prune figs every single year to get new growth. That fig tree is going to be way more abundant if you prune it in the springtime so that it can produce more fruit, because the figs always show up on new growth. Verse 3, now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine. No more can ye, except ye abide in me. I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me ye can do nothing. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch or withered stick, and is withered, and men gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. If ye abide in me, and my words abide in you, ye shall ask what ye will, and it shall be done unto you. Herein is my Father glorified, that ye bear much fruit, so shall ye be my disciples. So we want to bear much fruit for our Father. And we do that by staying in fellowship with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ, our deliverer and our Savior. What's interesting about fruit trees is the most reliable way to propagate and reproduce fruit trees is to graft them. So they will have the most predictable fruit quality, growing habits, and resilience with grafting instead of growing them by seeds. Grafting joins the scion, remember from the fruit producing plant that you want, which has a known good fruit type, taste, color, variety, to a rootstock that is already mature, and it provides strength, disease resistance, and size control. The combination creates a tree that performs far better than one that's grown by seed. And almost all fruit trees today are grafted. When you go to a fruit store to get a lemon tree, an apple tree, peach tree, whatever it's going to be, they're almost always grafted because the rootstock, they've been growing the rootstock and it's much more mature, but then they take a new stick from, or a scion that's growing from a known good healthy tree, and when they put them together, they have a much more robust tree. Fruit trees grown from seed don't grow true to type. Their genetics can be variable. So the fruit might taste different or ripen unpredictably or have poor quality. So that's why grafting is used, because then it knows the exact traits from the cultivar. Also, seed-grown fruit trees may take many years to grow fruit, whereas grafted trees mature and produce fruit much quicker. So for example, a grafted fruit tree can take 3 to 5 years to grow fruit. But a seed-grown fruit tree can take 7 to 15 years, almost 3 times as long, to actually grow the same fruit. So that's why grafting is used. But some fruit trees don't root well from cuttings or other methods. Grafting is the most dependable way to do them. There is a tree called the Tree of 40 Fruit that was made by a professor in Syracuse University using the technique of grafting. He took 40 different types of stone fruit and grafted them on to a rootstock. And they ripen sequentially from July to October. These include almond, apricot, cherry, nectarine, peach, and plum varieties, among others. So each spring, the tree blossoms in a mix of different shades of red, pink, and white, and produces 40 different kinds of fruit throughout the year on the same tree. But it's the same rootstock. Jesus is the root of Jesse, the branch of the righteousness from Nazareth, who is our deliverer and savior. We've been grafted in with all of our variety, more than 40 different varieties, I might add, into this living tree when we believed on him. We've been given clean garments in the form of Holy Spirit, and we can invite our neighbors to join us under the fig tree and bring them to Christ. The root is holy. It provides strength and sustenance, and we can bring forth fruit quicker because of it. Let's go to Isaiah 27:6, please. Isaiah 27, verse 6. He shall cause them that come to Jacob to take root. Israel shall blossom and bud and fill the face of the world with fruit. Now go to Psalm 92. Psalm 92, verse 13. Those that be planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. And we're going to close. Our last verse is Proverbs 11:28. Proverbs 11:28. He that trusteth in his riches shall fall, but the righteous shall flourish as a branch. So thank you all very much for the opportunity to teach. As we can see, Jesus Christ is our branch and the rootstock that we have been grafted into. Thank you.
Well, that was awesome.
Very
Wow.
cool.
Any comments?
And Psalm
Great job.
92, Psalm 92, the next verse where those that are planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. The next verse says, they shall bring forth fruit in old age. They shall be fat and flourishing. Ah,
Mm.
was
Really great putting all that together, Wendy. That was a beautiful teaching. Boy.
Yeah.
Thanks. It was
Great
interesting that Nazareth comes from the root word of branch. I never knew that before studying that.
Yeah, I never knew that. And I never heard of a 40 fruit tree either.
Yeah, from Syracuse, right up your way there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't imagine that. I didn't even know there was 40 different fruits.
Yeah.
Stone fruit.
And yeah, specifically stone fruit, exactly.
Oh, okay. Wow. That narrows it even more. Because
Yeah,
that's one that has a pit in it, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So that means no
Nectarine,
apples.
plum, probably not apple, peach though.
Yeah.
Peach,
Mm-hmm.
almond.
Nectarine.
I mean, I only read a few of them, but yeah, 40 different kinds.
Wow. That's amazing.
That is amazing.
It is. Wow.
I thought it was pretty neat to know that in God's nature, the grafted trees are able to bring a stronger, quicker, more fruit. That's just fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And you
Yeah.
think we've been grafted in, and that God prunes us so that we can bring forth more fruit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's certain trees, like I said, with like the fig tree, you have to prune it every single year. In fact, I've got some fig trees and I'm slack in pruning them because I've been out of commission for a little bit, but I still plan on doing it because you need to do that in order to get the better fruit.
Yeah, you said the figs grow on the new growth. That was new to me.
That was new to me too, but it made me think of, cursing the fig tree, because what it should have been doing, it wasn't doing, and if it wasn't doing it, it means it wasn't going to be doing it. And how symbolic that was to Jesus Christ, but also to the apostles, but to us. But once again, it brings it back to, they would have understood, the culture would have understood all of that
Mhm.
so clearly because they were agrarians, that was day in and day out, you have a better understanding because you're an agrarian. I mean, you're out in that yard doing stuff, pruning, picking, whatever, all the stuff that you do. But for us, to have to take a deep dive, it's really a whole learning to a whole different cycle of the word. It's pretty amazing. I think you made it very clear, and grafting, pruning, has to, you don't produce if you don't.
Mhm.
That was quite a dig in there.
And it was interesting to find out that the line of David, who were captivity in Babylon, came back to, in and around the Nazareth area. That's why both Jesus's mom and stepfather are from the line of David.
I wonder if Jesus knew if he saw that fig tree had been pruned and it didn't have any fruit.
Yeah,
So
maybe.
that would really, wow.
But we know that fig tree is also indicative of Israel.
Yeah.
It's a symbolism for Israel, the fig tree.
So they don't need
Right.
pruning?
No, they do, but he
Oh.
was saying fig tree, the fig tree was dried up from the roots because the Pharisees, the leaders they had filthy garments.
Yeah.
Correct.
So they weren't producing fruit.
They weren't producing fruit. So this
Yeah.
tree was, it was kind of a symbolism for that.
Mhm.
Yeah, all the fig trees you buy today are grafted onto a it's like a similar stem because the fig tree itself is the rootstock is weak and it's real subject to nematodes being captured by nematodes, and then they don't produce fruit because the nematodes get all the good stuff. So they grafted onto a relative tree that's a lot more hardy and doesn't isn't subject to the nematodes.
Yeah, you pretty much can't buy a tree, a fruit tree now from any place that's not been grafted.
I
It's
was
something like 90% of the fruit trees that you buy or that are available for sale are grafted trees.
I was very sad to hear that you said it takes 7 to 15 years for a tree grown from a seed to bear fruit, because I have an avocado and a mango tree that are both 10 feet tall, but they're potted. And yeah, I may never see fruit.
Yeah.